names now. Noel Cleland. Katrina Bernabe. Priscilla Carolyn Schmidt. Marcelo Balladores. Maddie Kaufman. Catherine Accardi. And Bernice. Yeah, Bernice, you don't have the best handwriting. Bernice with the Y. Bernice. All right. Let's go.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Noel Cleland. I live at 5990 Southwest 50th Street, and I'm here to speak in favor of our item 2B. And it's nice to be speaking in favor of something. Not always opposed to things here. Glad to see the Commission is taking this matters of innovation seriously. It's important to realize that our choices for what to do with our waste stream is more than just incineration and landfilling. And all these methods we have of trying to come up with ways to reduce the amount of waste that goes into our landfill is important. And the idea of trying to be able to incentivize this, it works very well. We're a capitalist society, and we want to get people to pay attention to something. You make them pay with their wallet. So if you're interested in getting people to drive more fuel-efficient cars, you increase the cost of fuel. You're interested in getting people to reduce the amount of water that they use, you increase the cost of water. You're interested in trying to get people to reduce the amount of waste, because we're twice the national average of waste, then you incentivize that by making the efforts to reduce their waste stream be something that's a positive influence in their wallet. So these are all great methods, and there's plenty of others we can do. I'm on the Green Task Force with the City of South Miami. We're working at implementing a composting system there for the city, as Pinecrest has done. Anything we can do that reduce our waste stream will avoid all these other methods that are not as favorable for us. And I still have plenty of time. I'll yield it back to the Commissioner.
You're a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here. I applaud for putting this on the program. I'm speaking on about 2B. I'm against the idea of having an incinerator. Let's go for composting to do the effort. Our lifetime, I'm getting old. Our lifetime on Earth is very short. And what we have to focus on is that we are the stewards of all species, plants, animals, our pets, especially our own, our children, grandchildren. And every time we make a decision, a political decision, we have to focus on one thing. What is good for planet Earth? What is good for nature? Not greed. If we see and observe other creatures, they look out for each other. They only take what they need. They share. We are not sharing enough on this planet. And we need to really be good stewards for what we have here in Florida. So it is good that we can compost, that I am all for that. And I want to thank you for bringing us here together to do so.
Thank you. Give me your name and your address. You didn't say it.
Oh, I'm sorry. As being a senior. Katarina Bernabe. I live at 1713 Southwest 103 Place, Miami, Florida, 33165.
Thank you, Katarina.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Priscilla Carolyn Schmidt, and I live at 1595 Northeast 141st Street in North Miami, Florida, 33161. I, too, am here to support Agenda Item 2B and encouraging, well, I see it as rewarding people for things that they're already doing. Myself included, and I'm sure many people here, I've been composting for nearly 2 decades, recycling diligently for just about the same amount of time. And personally, we do pick up in my neighborhood about twice a week for the trash pickup. I put out my bin once every 2 weeks. I work with Fertile Earth Worm Farm, and we work with several large-scale companies, stadiums, hospitals, that have to right now, they pay an extra cost for our services. they pay an extra cost to do the right thing until they're able to offset their costs to other waste management services. So incentivizing, using the carrot versus the stick, as they say, we think is a very positive solution. It would reward residents who already are doing, quote unquote, the right thing in terms of reducing their waste. It would reward businesses that are doing the same thing. And while I'm here, I want to take the opportunity as well to thank Commissioner Regalado for District 7 support in already having been implementing a program for over 2 years. They've diverted over 1,000 pounds of waste through the residential drop-off program. I did the quick math in my own home. We roughly divert 2,000 pounds of waste in my own home just from composting in my own backyard and making soil. And I want to also thank Commissioner Higgins for pulling the ordinance and taking the time to rework on it so that we can actually make composting a reality in Miami-Dade County. And so to all of the commissioners and county officials that are in support of this, we see you, we appreciate you, and we thank also Commissioner Bastian for sponsoring this bill, and we sincerely hope that it does take into effect and rewards those of us who are already reducing their input into the waste stream. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Marcelo Baidars. Address is 16171 Southwest 73rd Street, and I am the Everglades organizer with Sierra Club, Florida. I'm here to speak in favor of item 2B. The county needs a strong commitment towards a zero-waste future. So item 2B, exploring a pay-as-you-throw program, is a great step in the right direction. We support this item and other zero-waste items that have been put before the committee today, and thank Commissioner Bastien and other commissioners on the board who have put in the work to move us towards a zero-waste Miami. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Maddie Kaufman, and I live at 2508 Southwest 19th Terrace. I'm the program director of Debris Free Oceans, a Miami-based nonprofit empowering communities to go zero waste since 2014, and also lead Zero Waste Miami, which is a cross-sector coalition building Miami's circular economy with over 130 entities engaged. And I have an international flight today, but I had to make the time to come and speak in support of item 2B, which would be an incredible way to reduce waste in Miami-Dade County. This would not only raise public awareness of the amount of trash that they generate, allow us to track differences in waste generation across households specifically for targeted outreach, and most importantly, allow us to incentivize households to produce less waste. It makes complete sense to require those who produce more waste to pay more to cover its management. Additionally, the lower income families who are less responsible for waste generation from Amazon deliveries, carry out, and overconsumption will no longer have to bear this burden. As mentioned in the resolution language, pay-as-you-throw programs have significantly reduced waste in other states. I wanted to highlight that City of Gainesville has had pay-as-you-throw since 1994, according to the EPA. They entered a waste contract with Waste Management where residents simply pay a different monthly rate based on their selection of a 35, 64, or 96-gallon trash bin. Within the first year, the EPA reported that solid waste collected, or the amount of solid waste collected decreased by 18%, and the amount of recyclables recovered increased by 25%. So thank you, Commissioner Bastien, for sponsoring such an exciting resolution to support waste reduction across the county.
Thank you.
My name is Bernice Yanis. I live at 500 Northeast 29th Street, 1108. I am speaking in support of item 2B, which is the pay-as-you-throw. I personally pay $20 a month to compost my waste, so there's very little trash that I'm actually producing. And I go to shops like Verde Market to buy my dry goods in glass jars. I rarely buy from the grocery store in a way that produces waste, and I would love for people who live in a similar way that I do, which honestly is a bit difficult way to live, given that it's very easy to just go to Publix or Whole Foods and grab everything, or order things on Amazon. It's easy, but I don't like to produce the waste, and I would appreciate it if the county could recognize that there are people trying to produce less trash, to incentivize them with this kind of program where it's if you're gonna, produce more trash, you pay for it. If you don't, then you pay for not. And I also know that there's a discussion a lot of in Miami-Dade County or Floridians are apathetic towards waste and how much they produce. And I don't think that's true. I think they're just not informed, and something like this being offered really makes people think about how much they're consuming. And then this paired with some of Commissioner Regalado's other zero waste initiatives, and Commissioner Higgins, I think, also appreciate looking into composting and making that a reality for us. I think that really puts Miami-Dade in a better place. This will save us money in the long term and make something costly like the incinerator be something that we don't need to look at any longer. So I appreciate you guys looking at this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine Accardi, and I live at 816 Northwest 11th Street, Miami, Florida, 33136. And I am here to speak in support of item 2B, the pay-as-you-throw system, and I'm hoping for a future in zero waste and will hopefully reduce the need of the trash incinerators. And I look forward to options in support of recycling and composting. I personally live on my own and produce very little waste and would appreciate a system such as pay-as-you-throw system. And I also want to thank Commissioner Bastian for sponsoring this bill to support waste reduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Having no more cards. Oh, okay.
Chairman Gilbert, if you would allow me to comment in the hubbub of getting here. I forgot to fill out my card. I'll take less than 2 minutes. First of all, I just want to thank this. Yes.
Time out. Before you start talking, I have to actually say yes to that. So before I say yes to that, I want you to give me your name, your address, and as soon as you finish, I want you to fill out a card.
I will. Thank you, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Stephen Leidner, 1130 102nd Street, Bay Harbor Islands. Yes, thank you to this committee. There are several really inspiring items, inspiring bills on this for consideration today. And the pay-as-you-throw will have significant impact if adopted. It's shown to reduce garbage production by as much as 40%, almost. I don't want to use the word instantly, but quickly. So please seriously consider pay-as-you-throw. I want to thank Commissioner Higgins for what she's doing to move the idea of composting forward. Commissioner Regalado, in terms of your idea of setting up local sites for yard waste, it's a great idea. What I would suggest or add or ask you to consider is that the mulching be done on site and people be allowed to leave with mulching that is available. So basically, it's a one-stop shop. And additionally, also moving or asking that the WSP, the consultant, the zero waste consultant, that report has an 18-month due date. And figuring out a way that we can move that process forward in a more timely manner, so we can get our zero waste solutions implemented. And finally, renaming our Department of Solid Waste, the Department of Resource Recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Reasonable opportunity to be heard is now. Fill out that card right there he's giving you. Yes, thank you. Reasonable opportunity to be heard is now concluded. Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Chair, the matters for consideration at today's meeting are those on the official agenda, which includes the changes in the changes memo. There's also one additional item not on the changes memo. That's item number 2F, Legistar 251463. It's a resolution directing the county mayor or designee to take certain actions with respect to the permitting process for municipal utilities conducting water and or sewer construction. Mr. Chair, because that's just been added to the agenda, it would be appropriate to open the reasonable opportunity for that one item.
We will. Reasonable opportunity to be heard is now open on 2F. Reasonable opportunity to be heard is now open on 2F. Okay, it's now closed. Where are we at on Commissioner Regalado?
So the chair's office said that it was okay to add it. We're waiting. Nope. Okay, come back. Nope. Yes. Oh, you haven't gotten it? Diallo's right behind you.
Okay, so this we'll do, Commissioner Regalado. Let's get into our agenda.
Figure it out.
If we do it and you all can get it before done, I don't have a problem. If the chair's office is fine, I'm fine also. All right. Anything else on the agenda?
Motion to set the agenda.
I need a motion. Higgins and Cohen Higgins moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? All right, show the agenda adopted. Mr. Attorney, where are we?
Mr. Chair, there are no public hearing items, and so it's at your discretion how to proceed.
Just go in, we can go in order, or I don't really run committee meetings in this way, but if there is, why don't we do the discussion item first? Let's do the discussion item, because I think the discussion item might help frame some of the other items. So, is the department here?
And Mr. Chair, if I could just,
Yes, they are. Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
You can't see them for the,
Henri, ask the young lady who's on the phone in the back of the chamber, she should just step out in the hallway. It would just be better if she did that. All right. Madam Director, it's always good to see you.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you had a good 4th of July. I hope we all had a good 4th of July.
Yes.
All right, so where are we? Presentation. Do we want to just start asking questions, or we want her to have some baseline information? I know at the meeting, people asked about the actual, the areas, the specific areas, and they want to see the cut and all the stuff in those areas, and how it would affect that. Maybe you can get into that. That'd be great.
Sure. Good morning, Anisha Daniel, Director for Solid Waste, through the chair, commissioners, all in your respective places. Let me provide some information. So we provided a couple of briefings, and we were able to go back and provide each of your offices with a BAT report, which provides you with your line items for for the entire collections fund. We also did a roll-up of the collections fund as well, so that we can show you the revenues as well as the expenditures at a high level. And then we also provided you with a 5-year pro forma for the 0%, 1%, and 2%. Based on the information that we provided, what it shows is that I'm going to focus on our expenses. So when I came before you the last time, what I shared with you is that we were able to save about $4.8 million. I said nearly $5 million, but that's our net. Based on some of the things that we've been able to do in the department through overtime, efficiencies, and modifying some of our programs and looking at logistics on some of our routes, also looking at our disposal charges as opposed to having some of our collections go to the transfer station, having them going directly to the landfill. That cuts down some of our costs as well for collections. These are the things that we were able to do. We actually saved over $8 million. The net was almost $5 million because there was additional costs in fleet, as I mentioned before, and there was some additional costs in construction costs. And so what you see in the line items that I provided you, you'll see those different costs in our end-of-year projections and how we were able to save costs. But you'll also see in the base for the next year how we're still going to see steadily some additional costs in our expenses. These are inflationary costs that we cannot control. As I also mentioned, there is continual growth. There's development happening throughout this entire county, particularly in the South. All of that growth, we have to provide service. We have a responsibility to provide service, which is what we do. And that means more trucks, that means more routes, more people, and we're providing that. And I'm here to say that our complaint ratio is less than 1%. It is negative. It is 0.001. So we're doing the work. Our staff is out there making sure we pick up the garbage. And this holiday, 4th of July, that Tuesday is our heaviest day. It is the heaviest day, but we will have no garbage left on the ground because our folks are out there doing the work. And so the 1% that we've received, it's not the 2% that we asked for, but it is still something that allows us to continue to provide the service that we need. But what it does mean is, in the next year, there will be a need for an even higher increase because cost of living is going to continue to happen. I have a collective bargaining agreement that states that I have to provide merit increases and I have COLAs. And so that's the bulk of my costs. Fleet cost is going to continue to go up, 45% increase within the last year. Those are costs that I cannot control. A lot of the equipment costs and supplies and construction. We have our 40-year and 50-year recertifications that we've been doing on our facilities. That's work that I have to do, and that cost is going up. And so I will yield and take questions, but this is my reality. I've been doing all the things that I can do to make sure that I can minimize that impact by looking for efficiencies in everything that we do and ensuring that we continue to get the work done without compromising the level of service that we need to provide to our residents.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner Regalado, you recognize.
Thank you, and thank you, Director. I think that we still have the opportunity to do more, like I mentioned at the meeting. I think the memo that was issued, first of all, I was very clear when we had the conversation that we were going to get very little information without an RFI or an RFP, because these are people's businesses, and people do not give us proprietary information without a process. So we went through this, and it really isn't a process. So the 1,000-page memo that we got, very interesting, but lacks the detail that we need in order to make decisions on July 16th. And we will take that up on July 16th, where I hope we have a conversation about RFIs or RFPs again, because I think that within that memo, there are certain opportunities, but we're not going to get to the fiscal impact of those opportunities without an RFI or an RFP. Like I've said before, we don't have a crisis because we have contracts, but we do need to at some point make decisions. That being said, there were a series of things in that memo that didn't get to the price piece. And we talked about that on our briefing. The cardboard was one of them. I think the yard waste is also an opportunity. I represent a district, as does Steinberg and as does Higgins, where we make a lot of yard waste. We have a lot of yard waste. And it's yard waste that can be mulched, that can be added to sludge in order to take it from a class 1 to a class 2. Currently, we pay for someone to give us yard waste so that we can do that. And that doesn't make sense because we're up to our eyeballs in yard waste. There is also an opportunity there to get paid for the disposition of that yard waste. So I personally have a mini dump in Chapman Field. I would be more than happy to expand my mini dump in Chapman Field and take yard waste because I represent a district where they have to haul it all the way to the dump, and that doesn't make sense. And they would very happily haul it across the street to Chapman Field, pay for it, and then we can mulch it, and do something with it. That being said, I do want to clarify a few things because we're dealing with a lot of different items today. To the Sierra Club, I am expanding composting to South Miami, so don't worry, done. However, we pay for that. The Pinecrest program we pay for out of our budget in District 7. So the concept that we're gonna somehow, incentivize people, like pay people to compost is a difficult thing because it costs money to compost. So we're like in the red for the composting. However, I'm fine with that because we reduce the trash. So when we get to, pay as you throw, understand that that's a difficult thing and there will be winners and losers. My district will be a winner, but there will be losers. And that's why I brought an item to look at Airbnb and trash and who are the bigger kind of, trash, who's creating the most trash, right? Especially if it has a commercial endeavor. But back to you, Madam Director. In terms of, accelerating the methane, I know that that's not something, I know my understanding is the RFP is going out, that it was ready. I wanted to talk to you specifically about the methane because I believe that is something that we could do within this fiscal year. I do not think, but have you looked at the impact that collecting the methane would have on next fiscal year? Because you said that no matter what, we're gonna have a shortfall.
Hold on for a minute,
next
Commissioner
year.
Regalado. Hold on for a second. A pet peeve, I know he has to give you information, but if a commissioner is actually talking to her, taking her attention away from the commissioner while she's talking to her, is a bad idea that you should never do again. Continue, Commissioner.
So have you considered the methane and the impact that the methane extraction would have on next fiscal year if we're able to get that off the ground this year? Because you said, I'm going to have to raise fees next year no matter what. And I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think that there's a lot of things that this board can do during this year that can help us for next year.
So let me start by stating that with regards to the landfill, the RNG project, that project's going to take about 18 months for them to build it. And beyond that, that's going to be generating revenue for our disposal. It would not have an impact on the collection fund. So those are the two different pots.
But those pots have not bothered this commission in the past. So in the past, we've taken, you know, and that's part of the problem, by the way. That's part of the problem. But again, you know, and I don't think it has to take 18 months. My understanding is that it can be done in 12, which is why I'm telling you. But even if it is 18 months, okay, that still gives you a certain amount of months in collection, right, next year, because we're 12 months away, right? So you're looking at a 6-month collection. Have you looked at fiscally what that would look like and where that money could go? Because where that money goes, we can have that conversation.
Yeah, no, we've looked at how much revenue we'll generate once we were able to bring on an RNG renewable natural gas project online. We'll be able to generate probably about $1 million a year. I think Achaya or Nick, either one, can you come up to provide some additional information? But that project can generate about $1 million a year, but we're going through that process with procurement so that we can get that project online. There's been a lot of hurdles we've had to jump, but we continue to get the project moving. It was kind of stuck, but you know, in the year that I've been here, we've been keeping the project moving, and we're very close to getting that done and getting it out. You had another question, I think, on what we were talking about with the
yard waste.
With the yard waste. So with yard waste right now, we do collect at our TRCs, 7 of our TRCs, and I believe Chapman is one of them that we do. So if the TRC is large enough and we have about 9 bays, we're able to actually dedicate some of our bays to clean yard trash, and so that we can actually separate that and mulch it, and we can use it for a beneficial reuse at our landfills. Additionally, we've made some additional adjustments in our program for bulky as well, something that we just did this year, and that is bulk. When they're going out and picking up bulk pickups throughout the community, oftentimes you're picking up a whole bunch of different things. We are now designated where if it's just clean yard trash, they can actually set that, so we can have one truck that's picking up only clean yard trash, and that is already separated. So we are doing things so that we can get clean material coming in, so that we can get a beneficial reuse of that. That wasn't happening before, but we're doing that now.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I think we can do more of it. I can tell you that, at least in my district, Coral Gables, Pinecrest, South Miami, they're all interested in partnering with us to do more yard waste, right? And to provide a clean stream. And at the same time, I also have residents that are interested in the mulching piece. And by the way, we have departments that could benefit of the mulching piece, right? So my only concern with the yard waste and the mulching is we have to be very careful not to include invasives, because obviously you can't mulch invasives, right? So that's the only, so when we say like there's no panacea, right? There's no world in which I collect all yard waste and I can mulch it all without there being the possibility of a problem, right? Because if somebody throws an Australian pine in that mulch, I'm gonna have a problem, right? Because now I have a germ issue, right? I have an invasive issue. So there are some guardrails that are needed, but you know, the item that I'm bringing in terms of the mini dumps, I think that there's a lot to be done in terms of the mini dumps and extending that. And I think that you're only looking at the cost of extending the mini dump and not necessarily the cost benefit of having another quote unquote transfer station, which is what a mini dump could potentially be, right? Depending on what you're collecting there, right? And what that does in terms of the waste stream. So those are my thoughts. I think that there's a lot more, even with the methane. Yes, the methane is $1 million. And that, let's say that $500,000 comes in because it takes 18 months instead of 12 months. That's still $500,000, right? That's $500,000 more than we had before. So there's no one solution to this thing. My point is that there's several ways to do it. And by the way, with the collection of methane, not only are you going to make money from it, it's not going to stink. It currently stinks because of the methane. So there is, even if we didn't make money from the methane collection, I would tell you to collect the methane, right? Because right now we're burning it, and the reason the dump smells so bad is because of the methane. So I think that there's a lot of places in this system where we could cobble together enough to start making this work and to start changing the dynamic of the system. But I think the bigger issue, and you mentioned the coal and you mentioned other things, I think the biggest issue is not that. The biggest issue is how much it costs to move trash. And that's what I think we should need to be focusing on, because I think commissioners need to understand that everybody needs a piece of this, right? I'm all for mini dumps. And by the way, my residents are not anti-mini dump, quite the opposite, right? It's a weird thing, but some people are. Some people are anti-mini dump, right? I will tell you my district is not, because they understand it. And I don't think that we should demonize mini dumps. I don't think we should demonize transfer stations. I think that there's a way to do it properly. And if people have a place to leave trash, and you explain to them the utility of that and the benefit of that, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. So those are the only things that I would add, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to go to Commissioner Higgins next. Just to add some context to this, though, based on the conversation at the larger board, the entire commission, and the direction from the chairman, I think it would be wise that for the purposes of our discussion here, and I want as many innovations as possible, but any savings we get have to go towards mitigating the natural increase in the cost of the program. So that's the first thing. It has to go to that point. And so I understand that at some point we have to take a step forward and be as conscious of the environment as we can, but in a year where our instruction is to minimize the increase in cost, we should focus on that. So all of those things. So if something isn't at least cost neutral, I think it's difficult to do this year, because we're stuck at one. They say they need two. Our goal should be next year not to have to go to 3 or 4. So that's I think consistent with what the chairman wants us to look at. You recognize Commissioner Higgins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Danis, so I just have a question for you. I'm remembering back several years ago when, as Commissioner Gilbert, or Chairman today, always points out, when I first got on the commission, we had a commission that had 4 decades, really, come close to bankrupting the department, right? We were always borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. And we had reached a point which forced this board to take action, that we were going to be moving from garbage pickups twice a week to once a week, which I think is ridiculous, right? I mean, if anyone's looking at the pictures of Philadelphia where their guys are on strike and they have not picked up garbage in 7 days, it's quite something. You may not know the answer today, but I would like an understanding, right? Last year, this board made the right decision, which is you guys are going to save money. We told you to do it, and you've done it. But we're going to fund you to run a modern department that provides services to the resident and continues us on this path, including the innovations that Commissioner Regalado and many others have focused on to innovate to move towards zero waste. But in the meantime, we're going to fund the department. And at 1%, we're looking like we're not doing that, right? We're going to be borrowing out of reserves, which takes me back to the previous board I used to serve on before, I was lucky enough to get all of you all here. I would like to know at what point in time, if this board does not fund you properly, right? You can guess $1 million here, $30 here, $40 here of all the stuff you're going to save, right? All of the innovations that are being proposed minimize waste, but don't generate hundreds of millions of dollars. They generate pennies, right? They minimize our waste, which is a good thing for the world, good thing for the environment, but they're not making anybody rich. And some of them may be cost neutral, right? They may be the right thing to do that don't actually bring in a ton of revenue. But what I want to know before I get to the next meeting on the board is, at what point in time, if we continue on this trajectory, do we move from 2 garbage pickups to 1 garbage pickup a week? Like that to me, as I always say, local government, we do a lot of things to make people's lives better. But they only allow us to do the nice things like fabulous parks and beautiful trees on streets and great libraries if we do the essentials, right? Which is keeping people safe, making sure that if you get a fire in your house, somebody drives up and puts it out, making sure if your grandma has a heart attack, an ambulance arrives, and that we pick the garbage up. And every year we seem to do those other 3 things, but when it comes to picking the garbage up, we forget that that is a top priority for residents. They don't complain about it now because we do it. We do it twice a week, and we do a bloody good job at it. And the reason we are doing a bloody good job at it is because this board, not the previous one, this board has stood strong and said, we're not going to play those games, and we're not going to be in the path to bankrupting the department. We're going to make sure we can pick the garbage up. So I want to understand, at what point in time do we, because it seems like we're starting a new trajectory. We're becoming the old board, which just thinks you can do things for free. I want to know at what point in time we move from, it's clearly not this year, right? Because we probably have some reserves. Maybe it's next year or the year after. But I want to know what the risk is to moving from twice a week to once a week.
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Higgins, for your question. So I can't answer that question specifically, but what I can tell you, based on the 1% increase that this board has approved, what we will do is it will take me into a red $8 million in deficit in 2028. And then in the 5-year projection that I've had, I'm going to go $56 million in the deficit by year 5. And so at that point, I'm either going to have to borrow, increase fees, or do something such as go to once a week pickup.
When you say borrow, what does that mean? Sorry.
What we've done in the past, we've borrowed from the disposal fund, but based on the fact that I have landfills that are near end of life, there won't be much to borrow from because there won't be a revenue coming in from some of those landfills once they start to close. So we were going to find ourselves in a very difficult situation where my options are going to be very limited in what I can do.
Okay, thank you very much. And then just one last comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. There's been a lot of discussion here of people who are very excited about improving our composting options. In recent days, there's been a lot of misinformation online and Instagram where there are certain people that are saying that they're personally making allegations against me, that I am trying to stop composting in all of the county and bankrupt composters. I just want to put on the record that is patently untrue. I've been working to try to make composting legal for nearly a year now. You can see our director knows, she meets with me constantly. It is extremely complicated, extremely complicated. Anyone that is doing composting now is doing it outside of the law. Our code does not allow for composting. So the composters that are continuing to do this, we have worked with Durham, we've worked with Ms. Daniels in Solid Waste to say, let's just not throw them out of business. Like, let them keep going, right? Let's use these as the pilot projects before we Durham goes in there and shuts them down and puts them out of business. So I've been working on composting legislation. It's extremely complicated because we have 2 things. We have Durham's requirement that we make sure that as we're composting, we're not leaching all kinds of nasty stuff into our groundwater. We also have to balance the fact that we owe solid waste bonds and make sure that in composting we get an agreement, and we have finally gotten that ruling from our bond council that allows us to compost to a certain amount. So in September, I should have worked out all of the details to where we can have a composting permit. But I just want to make it very clear on the record, particularly to some of you that I presume have seen these misleading social media videos, that I am working diligently. I have meetings every week to make sure we can compost in a safe, environmentally sensitive way that protects our waters from any kind of contaminants. That is my intention. And the goal would be that we have more composting, not less composting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me just add something too, because sometimes when we say stuff like, at what point will we have to go to once a week? First, it's not a one-for-one like reduction. When you cut the pickups, you don't actually just cut it in half. You get less back than you think you would. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we never put it in its human term, because there's no world where we cut the services in half to once a week and keep the same level of employees or vehicles. So when people talk about reduction in services, one of the things that we say reduction in services, a sanitized way of saying we're going to reduce people. It's the human cost that's going to drive the system. And so, of course, none of us want to do that. And so that's why I think it's our charge to find the efficiencies and the innovations that allow us to actually, keep the system going and keep the service going in a way that our residents deserve. Hold on, Commissioner Cohen-Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Director, for being here. I know that it was at our last meeting that the board had requested that we have a discussion item at committee review so that we could get into the details of the need for the increase in fee in greater detail. And so I appreciate you being here this morning to have that discussion. So I'm not going to repeat what I mentioned during our previous hearing, but I will say, first of all, that I appreciate the information that you've provided since that hearing, and I look forward to us having a one-on-one conversation where we can really do a deep dive into these numbers. And so we'll have that before today and our July 16th hearing, which is or 19th, whenever it is that we're going to take a vote on this again. But for the purposes of today's discussion, the questions that I have are the following. I understand the need to fund the department. That is not lost on me. That is something that I clearly understand. But I don't understand the 47% increase in this fee over the last 5 years. From 44 to 711 in just 5 years is a rate of increase that I don't feel comfortable with. It means by the time that I end my term, assuming re-election on this dais, our residents are going to be paying well over $1,000 for solid waste fees. So for me, I understand that we did an elegant solution thanks to our then chairman, which I supported. But I'm still looking for the presentation that shows what I had requested at the last hearing that justifies an almost 47% increase in rates on our residents. And again, we can do that offline, and I look forward to that. But and I don't know if you have an answer to that as to why you think the 47% increase is justified. I'll give you the opportunity to speak to that now, actually.
Through the chair, the only thing I'll say is one of the things that Commissioner Hardeman mentioned, and I think Chairman Gilbert has mentioned, it's about a reset, because there were years when there was no increase, but yet there were still cost increases just because of the nature of the work that is done. You have salary increases every year, you have cost of business, doing business every year, but there was no fee increases. And so it has to match up. And for years, if you don't actually cover your costs, then you're going to be in a lagging behind, and then you're going to have to do what we did last year. So it's just a catch-up. That's what we did last year. And in the years when it did get increased, it was $25. I actually looked at some of the history where it was requested to increase at $50, but then only $25 was increased. So we never covered what the cost was in the past.
Okay, and thank you for that answer. Wasn't it the charge from the administration this year to have all departments cut costs by 10%? Wasn't that a request from the administration to all departments this year to cut costs by 10%?
They did ask us to cut some costs, and we did look at some costs that we needed to cut, but with enterprise departments, there are certain things that I actually can't cut. But yes, we did have to look at cutting costs and looking at where we can make some savings.
Okay, and that's my question. What was the realized costs that were cut from your department?
Some of the realized cuts that we did where I had to slow down some projects. So there were some projects that we were able to slow down from 1 year into the next year so that we can actually save some dollars there. Notwithstanding the fact that we even spent more money in that bucket because of the cost of construction. So even though I slowed down some projects, I still ended up spending more money in construction costs.
Okay, and again, this is a conversation that is going to be detailed. I have the spreadsheet that you sent to me. I have very detailed questions, and I look forward to having those conversations. But my overarching message is a simple one. In a financial climate that we are in, where every department, enterprise or not, is being asked to cut back because of the budgetary gap that we are facing, it's difficult for me to see a justification where we are having to increase fees on our residents. And you may say, well, of course we have to increase fees because there's a gap. But for me, it's more a situation of, like I've already articulated, I need to see the justification as to why. And I haven't seen that yet. So I look forward to having the conversations offline. when we get there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Director. I just asked Chief Morales to come over because I was curious about that question that you just asked. Cutting 10% from enterprise funds. So I didn't realize that was the direction. I thought that direction was more for the things that were subject of the general fund and non-constitutionals because, yeah, Jimmy, could you speak to that?
Through the chair, Jimmy Morales, Chief Operating Officer. Yes, the mayor challenged us at all departments, just because to the extent that you could identify some inefficiencies or things like that, whether you were proprietary or not, we want to spend our money as efficiently as possible. Obviously, the main focus was, as we all know, trying to figure out how we, bridge the gap in terms of the general fund. And so ultimately, that's where the significant cuts were. But we did challenge the proprietary departments to the best they could to try to identify. Director Daniels mentioned that they identified about $8 million in savings. Some of that was offset by other costs increases. And whether it was at the airport or the seaport, whatever, we did challenge folks if there were folks that were not necessary anymore, that if there were functions they could streamline or make efficiency. But the hard focus ultimately was where we had to really balance the budget, which was on the general fund. So I don't think most of the proprietaries ultimately did a 10% cut, to the extent that we didn't ask them to cut, bone and muscle like you do in a very bad year, like we've had to do to some degree probably on the general fund side. But we still encourage efficiency. But most of the proprietary funds, as you know, departments have a more healthy, the airport, the seaport, some of those departments, water, sewer in terms of their stream of funding. But solid waste, like DDPW, which is arguably also a proprietary department, are more challenged and have either been subsidized by general funds like DDPW, or in the case of solid waste, one of the points, and maybe to Commissioner Cohen-Higgins, is one of the things that enabled us not to raise rates a lot is that the disposal side has been subsidizing the collection side. So in addition to not raising rates, we were borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. So I think that's a challenge. And in some other communities, Miami and Coral Gables, they use general fund. So they have a lower rate maybe, or what looks like a lower rate, but they use general fund dollars to subsidize. So I think and someone used the word reset. I think we're trying to make the charges reflect the actual cost. And we'll continue to look at ways to save money, ways to create revenue. But I think the Director Daniels is saying is, in the current coming fiscal year, it's not clear that we'll be able to do enough to not need at least a 1% increase.
Okay. Are you finished, Higgins? Okay, Regalado.
Thank you. I just want to clarify a few points. First, Madam Director, when you say that on the disposal side, we are going to lose revenue because of the landfills, that's one of the reasons that we've been pushing the methane extraction. Because when you close a landfill, it continues to provide revenue through methane up to 25 years. So just because, yes, you're no longer receiving the tipping fee, right? But that parcel continues to generate, not at the rate that it did with the tipping fee, right? So the disposal fund doesn't go away for that property. It is just reduced, which is why we need to get with the program already on that and start collecting that methane. The second part is, like I've been saying, I think part of the problem that we've had with this department is the lack of a portfolio and the lack of options, and not really thinking about what happens year 3, year 4, year 5. You know, one of the items that I brought to this board that they put a pin on was an agreement with the city of South Miami so that they would have a transfer station that they want to run. And the administration had some issues with it. It would help South Miami and it would potentially help Coral Gables because they don't have to go as far with their trash. But in that scenario, they would be paying a tipping fee to us and we would not be doing anything. And it would be going into the disposal fund, right? Without us having to touch the trash. So my point is there are, and similar to what happened to Higgins and I when we dealt with compost, when you bring solutions, they say, oh, but you're going to reduce the trash. And if you reduce the trash, you blow up the bond. That's ridiculous. First of all, it's not right because the amount of trash that we have, to everybody's point, is enough to carry the bond well beyond my lifetime. So when we find solutions, we also find ourselves with a department that tells us to keep our solutions to ourselves. And that's the challenge, right? And you know, to your point, Mr. Chairman, in terms of the reduction of the trash, they love to pull that lever. They love to pull that lever. It's everybody's favorite lever. Let's go apocalyptic, because we all know that if you tell a politician that you're not going to pick up their trash, people are going to lose their minds. However, I will tell you this. The reason that we started composting, first of all, it took me forever to get this administration to approve composting for my district, because to Commissioner Higgins' point, it's technically illegal. After 3 years of banging my head against the wall, right, I was able to do composting for Pinecrest, right, paying it out of my money. I wasn't even asking the administration to do anything. And you know, the reason that we started having that conversation with Pinecrest is because they wanted to add a pickup. They wanted to add a pickup because they were complaining about the bugs and all the issues associated with trash. And once we added composting and once we got more people composting and now we're expanding it throughout the dish, we've been able to explain to folks that if you do not put food waste in your trash can, you don't get as many bugs. Forget the environment, you know, and that you want just simple, basic stuff. If you don't want bugs, you don't put food waste in there, right? So my concern is whenever we talk about trash, I feel like there's these levers, right, that for 30 years we've been pushing. So to say that the disposal is going on a decline no matter what, I challenge that. I challenge that because I personally brought an item that would give us a tipping fee without touching trash. And they told me to go fly a kite. So, you know, there are solutions here. It's just a matter of, are we interested in doing things that are different? And are we interested in creating a portfolio? And that's where I kind of challenge this idea that we have no option but to X.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
I don't think they are mutually exclusive, Commissioner Steinberg. Chief Morales, you're recognized.
Thank you. And Commissioner, I don't think anyone's saying that we're not open to looking at all kinds of things. We are. But one of the points that Anisha made earlier that I think I wanted to highlight, for years, the landfills and the fees they generate for the department heavily have subsidized the collection side, frankly, and the operations. So by way of comparison, last year, the two landfills generated $60 million for the department. We're not saying that we don't want to do the methane burning and whatnot, but it is going to be a much smaller number. So I think that's where we were just saying is, yes, we will do everything we can to burn methane, to create RNG and all that kind of stuff. But when those landfills close, and they will, that will be the next sort of significant phase in the department when we will see a significant drop in revenue into the department, and we need to plan for that. And that's part of, hopefully, the discussions is planning for that point.
Commissioner Steinberg, you recognized.
Thank you. No, I'm glad we're having this discussion. What I was trying to say before is I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think we need to be innovative, and I think we need to find all of those mechanisms that I know we're all working on trying to help reduce. We also need to look for efficiencies. At the end of the day, I think we're in here because obviously people before us kicked the can down the road and didn't recycle it properly. But I think ultimately we need to come up with, I just saw this recently. I kind of wish I had this a little earlier because it's a lot of information to digest. So I hope we can sit down prior to second reading and go through it. And maybe you can also show us what 1.5 would look like. Not just the 1, not just the 2, 1.5. I'd like to see all our options, really understand where we're at, and also the projections for the future. And what does that look like? Even though this is an enterprise fund and it's a user fee, are we in danger of actually using the general fund dollars in the future if we're not careful? So I want to make sure we have all that information. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Just to that point, there's a lot of information on here, but you can't give us papers with the letters too small like this. Just in the real world, I mean, I know we broke, but we can afford a little more ink and a couple more sheets of paper. This is ridiculously small. And I don't have horrible vision, but reading this would give me horrible vision. And so that's one thing. The other things I noticed, cities like the city of Miami, because I was curious also about how they provide their trash services, and it's interesting because their entire city is the customer. It's easier to take general fund dollars. So for us, it would be complicated. The reason why we always borrow from the disposal fund and not the general fund, even when the general fund, had money, in years when it did have money, it's a lot more complicated when you're taking dollars, countywide dollars, for not a complete countywide use. And so I won't say that it opens us up to litigation, but I'm not sure that it doesn't. I'm not sure that it doesn't. That's one thing. Also, when you did your composting, you weren't breaking the law because we weren't breaking the law. Let's just say it. We weren't breaking the law. We weren't breaking the law. That wasn't, no, we weren't breaking the law. We were experimenting. We were using our discretion.
It was a pilot.
Yeah,
it was a
we
pilot.
weren't breaking the law.
It was a pilot.
We weren't breaking the law. So, I think that, if we don't have anything else in the discussion, we don't have anything else for the director, it's fine. I just think that we really ought to be mindful about how we got here. I love Commissioner Cohen-Higgins' point about the increase. Because the increase is stark, and it actually tracks the time that I've been here. And people will say, I'm the bringer of higher fees. I'm just the bringer of paying for the thing that you have. So I'm okay with finding your inefficiencies to reduce the cost of it. But whatever we come up with, that's the cost of it. That's the cost of it. Because right now, and maybe we should stop calling some of our enterprise funds aren't really enterprise funds, because at this point, transit is not an enterprise fund. We're not trying for the service to pay for itself. And there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason because we understand that us moving people throughout this county is actually what keeps our economy going. And the very people that it serves won't be able to afford it if we raise the fee to actually pay for the service. So we understand that. Because some of our enterprise funds, airport, seaport, they're going to do their thing because people are going to fly in and they're going to sell out. They're going to do their thing. And that is what it is. But the enterprise funds like transit and solid waste isn't water. People know they want to turn on the faucet and they want water to come out. If you tell them they have to pay for water, they're going to pay for water. They need their water. They want to take showers. They want water. Okay, cool. Solid waste has to be thought of basically the same way. You want your trash picked up. You don't want this place to be nasty. I know I don't. And so one of the first items I brought as a commissioner was to actually partner with Miami Gardens to have them, just don't charge them tipping fees, but they will collect illegal dumping, because there was too much illegal dumping in my community and we weren't getting to it as the department fast enough. They're doing a much better job now. And Director, I'll say this. a lot of the problems that we've identified and inefficiencies we identified didn't start with you. We understand that you've been here for basically a year. We understand that. And I will tell you that the department under you is actually more responsive than it was previously. Because I will never forget the previous director when he said famously, well, yeah, it'll take us a while, but you know, the kids, they can just step over the trash on the way to school. I remember that. So I remember that. And I remember what I said then. Like, I think I called Jimmy right away. Yeah, Jimmy, we have irreconcilable differences. If we're going to have to, because my kids, you can't just tell my kids to step over trash on the way to school because you want to take an extra 3 days instead of letting the city pick it up. That's not something we can do. So I think that the efficiencies that Commissioner Regalado is trying to identify, I think they're important. I do think they're important. If it's $1 million, it might just be just $1 million for methane, collection versus the 60 million, but it's $1 million that we don't have to pass on in cost.
Exactly. It's
$1 million that we don't have to pass on in cost. And so those pennies will add up. Those pennies will add up. And so I appreciate what you all are doing. Is there anything that we can do because most of these things I note, and I think I said this at the commission meeting, don't necessarily affect the fee this year.
Right.
Is there anything we can do, any efficiencies, and this is more to my colleagues, any efficiencies that, and I was hopeful that I was prepared chairing this committee to have anybody who comes, any of our colleagues who came, they would have been able to speak, because I think the chairman wants us to air this out here, so it is not, in fact, a long deliberative conversation at the larger meeting, but it's just something we can do this year to minimize the increase. Because I personally, I was supportive of 2% because I don't want next year to have to do more than the 1%. So I don't want to put us in that situation because it becomes easy. Prior commissions, they would have conversations. I'd see their conversations. They'd have conversations about, well, it's not paying for itself. But it becomes, when you start saying, oh, yeah, we'll just borrow a little. We won't raise it as much. We won't track CPI. When you start doing that, yeah, we'll pass this collective bargaining agreement that requires us to give raises, but we won't actually pass a fee that supports the raises. When you start doing it, it becomes very easy to do. And when it becomes easy to do, you do it more often. And then you find yourself in 5 years raising a fee by 47%. And so we won't be here for that problem, but I don't want to pass it on. I don't want that to be our legacy. You recognize?
Thank you. Jimmy, I will say we don't want to burn it anymore. We want to collect it. So just on the methane. he said burn a few times. Look, I think there is things that we can do this year. I think one of the things we have to do is change the mindset on the disposal. And this is something that I want the administration to think about. Just because you're losing the landfills, that doesn't mean you're just giving up on disposals, right? So yes, you have the methane collection, and to the chairman's point, it is less than you were getting from disposal. But to the South Miami item and to this idea of other transfer stations, right? Can you collect a disposal fee without being the owner of that particular space? Yes, you can. So that is something you should consider, right? And reducing the, allowing other people to participate in this trash situation, I do not feel is in violation of the bond. I do not feel it is. We have plenty of trash. Commissioner Higgins and I, we had a sunshine meeting on this. Like, now they finally admitted that we can't compost our way out of this problem. Shocker, right? We knew that. This is a common sense thing. And look, the methane thing, it was hung up because the attorneys wanted to lease. I believe it could have been an easement. It's going out as a lease. We can't spend 2 and 3 years on the legal aspect of these things. This is madness. Like, we need to, no, it is madness. It is madness. These things can be resolved. And I say it as an attorney, right? Like, we can come to a solution on a lot of these things.
Well, our attorneys went to Harvard.
I'm aware. Yeah, but those of us who didn't go to Harvard found the solution. So, but so All right, yeah. So we can find a solution to these things. But I think it's on, obviously in the case of the methane, if someone is putting in infrastructure in a property that is yours, the best thing you could do is lease them the property. I understand that. But that isn't the only vehicle. You could also give them an easement, and they could use that easement, and put that infrastructure there, and we can get out of Dodge, right? Without triggering all these other things. And I think that the other problem is if you do get jammed up in these things, you need to come to the policymakers so that we can carve out an exemption so that you can move forward. Because again, getting mired in this for 3 years because of some rules in terms of leasing is absurd. So that being said, I think you need to rethink the disposal. You need to look at other options, and you need to consider, partnering with some of these municipalities that want to do the work. I also think that you need to consider how you're going to use the disposal fee, right? Because in years past, it's been used to subsidize trash, and I disagree with that. However, I don't disagree with the disposal fee being used to bring infrastructure. That makes sense. So if you use a disposal fee to add more mini dumps and to enhance your existing mini dumps so people could, wait for it, dispose of their trash without you picking it up or putting it on the front of your house, how many pickups do we have, large pickups in UMSA that are yard waste? A lot. If human beings had a place to drive through where they could put that and dispose it, they wouldn't have to call us and we wouldn't have to go pick it up. And it wouldn't turn into a neighborhood dumpster, which is what happens when someone sees a pile of yard waste and then decides to dump 3 sofas on it. So you need to rethink a lot of these things, and there are savings here. It's just you need to also invest in some infrastructure and start changing the way that you do things. And that's what I would challenge this board to push the administration to do, specifically in terms of the disposal fee and finding people different alternatives when it comes to trash. You would be surprised how many people will go and leave their trash somewhere else if you gave them that opportunity. And also, we could also commercialize some of this. How many gardeners, instead of driving across Miami-Dade County, would leave at a mini dump and pay? And couldn't you take that tipping fee? You could.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Steinberg.
I guess this is a question for our attorneys. I know today, we're going to be definitely by the next commission meeting setting some sort of percent. If we are finding these efficiencies, as Commissioner Regalado is so passionate about finding, and we are optimistic and we are able to find reductions, once we set that rate, is there an opportunity for us to legally adjust that rate some point during the mid-fiscal year, the following fiscal year, right? So this upcoming forecasted fiscal year, we're going to set a rate of, 0%, 1%, 2%, whatever the percent is, 1.5, whatever. Should we find those efficiencies, are we going to be able to adjust that rate to maybe benefit the users, the customers?
I think what the board has done in the past, for example, with special taxing districts, is there have been occasions where a refund has been issued during the year in order to return to the ratepayers any savings that have been accomplished during the year.
So the answer is?
No, he didn't answer the question. That wasn't, okay. I understand what the board has done in the past. So, and this is, when you asked the question, I kind of perked up because I asked this question at the commission meeting. And you didn't answer they didn't answer the question at the commission meeting either. They said you've done refunds, we can rebate, or we can discount it for next year. But the specific question is, can we lower a rate mid-year or increase a rate? So
at any point during the next fiscal year.
If we went to 2%, at some point we found efficiencies, could we lower it to 1%? And I don't see why we couldn't do it. And so that's the question that's being asked.
And Commissioner, it'll bear some looking into, and we will look into it. But my concern as I sit here right now is that 197.3632, which is the statute that enables us to add this non-ad valorem assessment to the tax bill requires the rate to be set at a public hearing between January and September 25th, and then that rate to be turned over to the property appraiser and the tax collector to be added to the tax bill. So I'm not familiar with any provision in the law that allows, once that rate has been set and provided and sent out in the tax bill, which gets sent out in November, I'm not familiar, as I sit here right now, with any mechanism that would allow this board to adjust that rate and require the property appraiser and tax collector to send out an amended tax bill.
Not just address the rate, but lower the rate. So I think that probably, well, I think you all should have researched it when we asked the question at the commission meeting, but I think there might be some flexibility in lowering the rate. I don't think we could go higher necessarily, but I don't know. And what would be the argument if someone sued us? Hey, you know what? I'm going to sue you all because you made us pay less. So maybe this is a litigator's perspective, but the very first question I ask is, who could sue me and what could they sue me for? Yeah, so yeah, who could sue me and what could they sue me for? Yeah. I mean, if we lower the rate, what could they sue us for? Jimmy?
Yeah, through the chair, Jimmy Morales. But is there a logistical issue? If it's on your tax bill, your property tax bill sort of, you pay it once, right? So would we be refunding then if you lowered the rates? How would that work logistically?
Okay.
I looked into it. So the issue is the refund, which is why at the meeting I said that the refund is more
Costs
expensive.
more expensive.
However, I did find that in some places what they did is they carried it into the next year.
As a
So
credit?
right, as a credit. So
That's
they
what I
carried it
suggested,
into the
yeah.
next year in little parentheses as a credit.
That's what I suggested we could do. We could do that, and that would minimize what we have to do next year. Because, I mean, we're thinking about this year. I'm thinking about next year and the year after that. I'm 3-year forecast all the time. So,
But
yeah.
you can print it. So what happens is you can put next year's increase and then have a credit, and then that's what they pay. That you can do. I did find that people have done that. That you can carry the credit. You can't. You would if you refund them. It's more expensive to send them the check than what's in the check. That's like when the city of Miami sends me 89 cents. You know, that actually happens. But you know, it doesn't make any sense. Like it costs $5 to send me the check. So, but you would. The smart thing is to put it as a credit.
Okay, got it.
And to be clear, Mr. Chair, either of one of those options would be acceptable. So the issuing of the refund check, given Commissioner Regalato's point about the cost of that, would be acceptable, as would using it as a credit towards subsequent years if there were savings achieved during the year. That would also be acceptable.
The only thing is that
Hold on for a second. First, you can't just say Mr. Chair and then start speaking. That's the first thing. The second thing is we already know it's acceptable. We're the policymakers. We're going to figure that out. It's going to be us.
In terms of who can sue you, though, technically, if you are the property owner this year and the next person gets the credit and you do not get it, that's the only issue. However, that is something that you can, if you give people notice, then that's something that they can contract around, and it's not that much money.
Yeah, and there are things that it'll just be running with the property. Yeah.
Right.
So we can look at that. That would be my observation if we're able to find efficiencies mid-year. That would be my preference, that we found a way to mitigate the increase that would be necessitated next year by either giving it back or somehow a reduction.
You could send them a notice also mid-year that they're going to get the credit.
I thought about that, but that's just like mailing stuff to people is expensive. Right. Mailing stuff, we really want to get away. I mean, we listen, one of the things that we can save in the budget, we could mail less stuff. We get a lot of mail. The county sends a lot of mail out. And not just this department. We mail a lot of stuff. And when you're mailing stuff, just think about it. It's not just to your house. It's to everyone's house. That's a lot. So, but in any case, your item is ready to be added on?
Yes.
You have another item? I'm sorry, Director.
No, I just wanted to make one comment as we move forward. Every recommendation that this board has submitted, we have reviewed it thoroughly, and we will continue to. I appreciate all of the innovation, and I am looking forward to making sure that we can become a more modern solid waste department and evolve so that we can be better at what we do. So I want to make sure I let you know we are looking at it. That is what I'm striving hard to make sure that we are the most efficient, we are the most sustainable solid waste department there is. That is my goal, that is my desire, and that is what we will strive and continue to get to.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, what's this item?
Mr. Chair, agenda item 2G has been added to the agenda. That's Legistar 251467. It's a resolution directing the county mayor to explore executing a memorandum of understanding between the Solid Waste Department and Water and Sewer Department for combined biosolids and solid waste hauling and disposal, and further to evaluate cost-effective opportunities for upgrading Class B biosolids into Class A biosolids. Whenever this item is taken up, it would be appropriate then to open.
I'm going to go ahead and open up a public hearing. Reasonable opportunity to be heard for this item now. Reasonable opportunity to be heard. Show it added to the. Do we need a vote to add it to the agenda? Can I just add it?
Yes.
It's been moved by Regalado, seconded by Higgins. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, show it added to the agenda. The reasonable opportunity to be heard on that item is now open. Reasonable opportunity to be heard on that item is now open. Reasonable opportunity is now closed. Okay. How do we want to tackle this agenda, folks? Is there an appetite to move everything on the agenda? What do you all want to do?
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, I just want to make two comments on
Yes.
two items.
Go.
Item 2B, lots of folks were here in support of pay-as-you-throw. Commissioner Bastian's not here, but I think I see her trusty assistant. The one thing I want to remind us of is low-income households tend to actually, per household, generate more waste and water because they have more people living in that household, right? So you might go to Pinecrest, there might be 4 people in like whatever, 20-acre house. But when you go into low-income neighborhoods, you could have 8 or 9 people living in a very tiny place. And so when this report comes back, when it comes to committee, I'm going to ask for a friendly amendment, or perhaps the commissioner might want to prepare a substitute that makes sure that we're not adversely impacting low-income residents. And colleagues, this happens in water and sewer. Low-income families, low-income households use more water than rich households because they have more people living there taking showers, drinking, and all the things that water does for us. So I certainly do not want to imperil people that are already having a tough time making ends meet while we're working on the thing that matters, which is incentivizing people to stop buying things that have so much bloody plastic and other things around it. And then, Mr. Chair, on item 3C, this is the moving of the resilience and the tech hub out of county control. I met with them several, maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks ago because I thought I had a hold on the item. Apparently it was a little mix-up and now it's coming here. But I had a lot of questions about why the county, which bid on something, won something, has been doing all the work with its employees, would create a not-for-profit, but not wholly separate from it. Essentially, we're not saving any money. We're still staffing this thing, but it's not out under our control, and we don't get the benefits of all of these. They also, at the time, had an idea that the person would be executive director, wasn't even a person that lived in Miami-Dade County, lived in a whole other state in the Midwest. So I just had a lot of, questions about the fiscal impact of this. When we moved Vizcaya out, Vizcaya became a 501c3 because they could get they could get other historic grant money. They became a complete separate entity. We don't have any county employees that are on loan to Vizcaya Museum. This item says they're going to move it outside of county control, so suddenly they do their own thing, but we still have employees. It's very unclear to me. So anyway, I got this at the last minute. I'm not super happy about it, but if it goes forward today, I'm just going to vote no on it.
You can go vote no on it. I would just say offer it. I mean, I'm carrying the item for the administration, and I think I initially brought the original legislation I worked on, but I think it's common sense that if we're moving the department out, we should move the employees with them. And so the idea that we would do that and then keep the employees that actually work there, let them do stuff for us and we still pay is offensive. And that thing we do where we move people out and then we just find new jobs for them, in a year where we're trying to cut positions, I don't know that that's something that I'm interested in either. So I don't mind, like, if you want to work on amendments to that, and I don't mind amending this item. I have no problem with that.
Do you want to defer it to the next committee meeting? Is that your preference, Mr. Chair?
I can defer it. Let me, Jimmy is.
I am, Mr. Chair, I am being told, actually through the mayor's office, that there will be no county employees if this moves forward. We're very supportive of this. There will be no county employees involved. It will be, I think, independent.
Yeah. Okay, but Mr. Chair, if I may continue that line of thought, we have county employees doing that work now. And so what are those people going to be doing? We're going to still have them here? What are they going to be doing in a year where we know we're laying off? And I don't want you to answer any questions. You met with me in my office. I gave you a list of questions. We agreed that you would answer those questions and come back and let me know what those were, right? In addition to briefing all of the other commissioners on this item. And so suddenly, now it's on an agenda under a different commissioner sponsorship, which is fine. That's just a little county attorney mix-up. That happens. But nobody came back and answered my question, so maybe it is different, but it still mentions Chessie as the person in charge, and Chessie has a whole other job, so even the memo didn't change. So did you all get briefed on this item? So the meeting I had, I said, this is confusing to me. I don't think it's fully baked. Go answer my questions, make sure you brief my colleagues, and then let's get back together and talk about it. None of that happened. So I think we should defer this item, and you guys will have the opportunity then to chat with people and make it very clear that this is separate, that all the employees are going to be residents of Miami-Dade County, not residents of some other state, which the last time I met with you, the person that was going to be in charge was going to be living, I think, in Minnesota. I don't understand how you're the head of the Miami Tech Hub living in the Midwest. So I still have all those questions, and I don't want to delay us today. So I'm happy to defer the item at your preference or whatever you prefer, Mr.
I want to see, well, first, Jimmy, I think when the mayor initially asked me about this, she said there was something critical about the timing.
In terms of getting federal funds, right?
So talk to me about the critical nature of the timing. Hold on, y'all gonna start this yelling out. That's what we're gonna do? Seriously?
My finger was.
I haven't been gone. Okay, I know, and it was a long time for you, but I'm coming to you. But both of y'all yelled out. I mean, the only people who are behaving, they're doing well. Yeah, you all, what are you doing? Okay, please approach. First, if there's a critical nature of a timing, let me know. But I think the questions that I've heard in the dais are important, and I would want them addressed.
Mr. Chair, do you want to dispense, is this the only item? Because I have questions on this item too. So you want to dispense of all the other ones? And
yeah, we can. All right. You have a question on anything else? Okay, go ahead.
Before we move the entirety of the agenda, on 2B, which I know a number of residents are here on and spoke about regarding the way that we're handling our solid waste in Miami-Dade County, if my memory serves me correctly to our chief, weren't we supposed to bring back our waste to energy item at some point, like now? Like, okay, it is coming to, that's my only question. Are we dealing with this at our July 16th hearing?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm sorry. That's right. There is I believe several weeks ago, the department put out a very lengthy memo evaluating all the, 40, 50 proposals that it received. And I do believe that item is coming to next week's commission meeting.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And then finally, Mr. Chair, on 3A and 3B, just a quick question. I'm supportive of the item. But here are my questions to whomever from whatever department can approach, because they are rather specific questions. When we have engineers that we pay to provide us with estimates on the costs of doing these jobs here in Miami-Dade County, and they're receiving some sort of compensation or remuneration for that advice and expertise, But their numbers are so far off from the estimates that we're getting, not from one or two, but from the vast majority of vendors that are bidding on these projects. Does that signal alarms to us at all? And do we have a baseline at all built into this process where we say at some point your estimates can't vary by a percentage of greater than 5% or 10% before we start looking at the work product that you are delivering to us as Miami-Dade County? Because otherwise, what are we essentially paying them for? And to be specific, in 3A, the contract that is being recommended for an award is 33% higher than the amount that our engineer recommended. And on 3B, the recommendation on that particular award is 25% higher than the engineer's recommendation. So do we not have a baseline within our internal protocol and procedures that say, in order to continue providing us with these estimates that we're relying upon in order to put together these very lengthy and expensive and arduous RFPs, your estimates need to come in within 5, 10, even 15% on the numbers that we're getting from the business community, or else you're letting us know that you are out of touch, or is this business as usual for us?
Good afternoon, Honorable Commissioners. Jay Fink, WASD Director. What we've seen in the industry with the bidding, with the projects, and Miami-Dade County is not alone, is that the construction projects that we're bidding, the costs that are coming in by the contractors are higher than what your engineer's estimates typically are. Your engineer's estimate are based on past few years, similar projects, what those numbers are. But the construction costs are continually to rise and rise and rise. When we look at the bids that are coming in and we look and try to evaluate whether the price is appropriate given by the bidder or not, you have to look at the other bids that are coming in. So in the case of 3A, you see there's two bidders. Yes, the low bid is 33% higher, but then when I look at the second bid that came in, the second bid was $1,700,000, $1,600,000 higher than the first bid. That tells me, okay, the low bid does appear to be low. In other cost estimates that have come before the commission, you look and there may be 7 bidders, and the first 2, 3, 4 bidders are all within a few percent of each other. That tells me that, okay, they've sharpened their pencils, they've looked at what the costs of the products and services are, what the cost of labor is, what the cost of the job is, and they're all bidding based on the same areas. With regards to the projects that come before you, where there is a cost discrepancy that's higher, we go back to the engineer of record and ask them, is this appropriate? Is there something that we're missing as far as why the bidder or why this project came in higher than the estimate? In most of the cases that we've seen, the engineer of record does come back and say, no, it's appropriate, but it's all based on supply and demand. How much work is out there, how many few contractors there are to do the work, and are the contractors that are there to do the work, what their labor force is that's available to do it. So the costs do come in, the costs are coming higher. We have not seen where we've got one particular engineer or consultant that's the only one that is coming in with such low estimates. It's sort of across the board. So I can't say that there's one engineer that while their engineering and design may be appropriate, their cost estimating seems to be lacking. It's really across the board scenario of what we're seeing.
Thank you for that explanation. This is not the first time that I've brought this up. I've brought this up at other committee hearings. And for me, just from an intuitive standpoint, if I'm running a department or I'm hiring professionals to give me estimates, I would want their estimates to be somewhat within a range that is reflective of what the actual business community is going to bring to us. Because then otherwise, we're allowing then the business community to dictate to us what the costs of things are. And if that's the direction that we're going to take, that's fine. But then it begs the question of what is the value of the engineers that are being paid for that service. So I appreciate the response. I'm going to continue to look into it because, again, I've brought this up at previous hearings, and I feel like our goal as a county should be to have our internal professionals give us estimates that are as accurate as possible, reflecting what the market is so that we can make informed decisions on our procurement, whether it's in WASD or in any other department. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hold on. I saw your hand. I saw you doing a little thing over there. Mr. Fink? What's your name? Director?
Whatever the pleasure of the chairman is.
No, I just want to it was a very, 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 very thoughtful answer, response. Just, I think it's my first time that I've actually heard you respond to a question. I would focus more on the direct question that commissioners ask and not the body of information you want to present to us. So answer the question first and then help us understand why, back out of it. I think that would be better. I was curious about the timing of things on these. So I know that we've talked previously about how long it takes us to do something. And I think previously, I think Namada said that there was CPI built into our contract. So we anticipate increases sometimes anyway. Are these increases above the ones we anticipate?
I would, Mr. Chairman, I would expect that, yes, these are above what you would anticipate in the CPI, because the engineer consultant that's coming up with the estimate is looking at the projects that they're basing the estimates on and adding the CPI to the dates of those costs that came in.
Okay, so then maybe what we should be doing is, so that we're honest with each other when we're making the initial decision, maybe our baseline assumption needs to change. So maybe the baseline assumption shouldn't be CPI. Maybe the baseline assumption should be CPI plus the cost of doing business. So an extra whatever percentage, if we understand that, like right now, we look at the stuff that's going on nationally or internationally with tariffs. We know that it's going to be more expensive to do business as a county. So everything that we're putting out needs to calculate that or consider that. Otherwise, when it's time to actually write those checks, you all wouldn't be back here in the well telling us, hey, we need an extra $6-7 million because steel's more expensive because Canada won't send us wood or something, or whatever it is they want. So that might be something that we look at, Jimmy. Yes, Regalado.
Thank you. Mr. Director, just to clarify a point, because I know we've talked about this in the past when we've gone through some other contracts. These two are interesting, and because you have the lowest bid on 3B is actually the highest bid on 3A. And when you mentioned CPI, you alluded to the issues that we have with materials, but there's also a big issue with labor, right? So these two contracts being on the same agenda is very interesting because you have one that loses 3A because he's almost 3 million above, right? And the difference really is a labor issue. So when we talk about these companies, if you could speak a little bit to the issues with labor, and maybe what we could say is, look, the engineer that's making these assessments should take into account the issues that we're having with labor. Because we know in a lot of these contracts, for a lot of different reasons, labor is now becoming more expensive than materials, which we thought we would never see, but here we are, right? Because they require a certain amount of expertise and subcontracting. And it's those subcontracts, right, that may dramatically change the price that we're getting that labor for.
So through the chairman, and I'll try to be brief and answer the question, but you're exactly correct with regards to labor. And each of these, the two contracts in front of you are very different.
Yes.
One is the erection of a water tank. The other is more horizontal, slip lining a pipeline. So with the erection of a tank, that's all materials. So probably the company that's more skilled or that's more attuned to building something vertically is probably going to be able to build a little cheaper as far as the labor, although the material items are probably going to be very similar in their bid. And you look at the horizontal, it's going to be more labor intensive, so that you look at the two low bids that are there, and they're both trying to sharpen their pencil, vying for the labor component of it. The third bid is sky high, but that just means that someone could do it if they wanted to do it, but they really don't need to do this job. So again, for the competitiveness, you look how close are those two bids, and that tells me at least I know I've got a competitive price.
Right. So I would just say if we're going to change, what we look at, we might want to include a separate consideration for materials and a separate consideration for labor, because I could tell you, at least for water and sewer, that's really what's driving the bus these days.
think that's a worthy consideration, Commissioner. Okay, so we're going to move all the items. What are we doing?
Except 3C.
Except 3C, and if I could be shown as a co on 2E, please.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. On 2F, it's one of our items that we added just now. 2F was just added today to the sponsor. This item requires consent from our municipal partners whenever there is going to be a permit issued for water and sewer construction. My concern in requiring consent is what if they don't consent? Why not just provide them with notice? Why would we want our municipal partners having to consent to our many WASD projects when we're under a consent decree? I'm just wondering why give them such power as opposed to just providing them with notice.
So it's his
Item. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, mine. It doesn't. It's not for our projects. Yeah, it's not for our projects. It's for a municipal. We have municipalities that are providing water in other municipalities out beyond their boundaries, and so it's not our projects. It's their projects. So when they are, like, if you have North Miami Beach doing a project in Aventura, they need to actually schedule to Aventura. And I'll tell you one of the things that happened recently. We had a soccer match, the FIFA club thing, and so North Miami Beach started a project right in front of the stadium on like 2 hours before an extraordinary match, and it caused traffic backup throughout the entire city. It was a cascading disaster.
It's a coordination issue.
Yeah, and so we need them to actually coordinate timing-wise on those permits. And then the Florida statute already says that they're supposed to have an agreement. They're supposed to have an agreement with so we want to see proof of that when you do it, but that is why.
The only thing I would add is we used to find out about these before when we were the sheriff, and now we do not. So that is one of the things. Before we used to get like the red flag, because they would have to put it in through police. So we would know because there has to be police officers there depending on who owns the street, but we've lost that information.
Yeah.
If I may. Yeah. I'll just say I'm gonna have to read this item because it was just put here. I mean, for purposes of today to pass it out of committee, that's fine, but I need to look at this a little closer since I do represent many municipalities, and I want to make sure that we don't have any unintended consequences and stopping actual work from being done either. So, all right, sounds good. Thank you.
I think that to the maker, I was just gonna mention, because I represent some of them too, that the only thing I would say is at some point that we wouldn't unreasonably delay them, right? So as long as they provide us with notice, we're not gonna, that's all. Maybe give a certain amount of time that they have to give it to us, and we have to give it to them, just so that, among friends, we don't have any fighting.
I think the on the timing issue is going to be interesting because what we actually need for them to do is we're interested in the actual work as the county, right? That the work is getting done. What we need from the municipalities we need them to coordinate. So we need them to coordinate that timing, and I don't imagine that will be what will delay it. I don't think that will be what delays projects. So in the instance where obviously we're hosting 66,000 people in Miami Gardens, and they start a project and put heavy machinery at the gates of Hard Rock Stadium, it was probably something that shouldn't happen again. So yeah, that shouldn't happen again. So we're gonna try to do this, see how it works. There's some other things that we have that are coming down the line. The legislature says that we need to actually deal with these issues because they're very local. And so I'll take the charter out for a spin, and I'll deal with the issues. So, all right. So we're moving everything except for which one? Are we moving all of them now?
Second. Except 3C.
Except for 3C. So it's been moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, show it passing. All right. I'll move 3C. Oh, are we deferring? What are we doing in 3C? Are we deferring it? Oh, I asked them on timing. Yeah. Oh, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. Come back. We need to
So
talk
my
about
hand's
this.
still up on 3C.
Yeah. We need to talk about this. So,
Thank you.
hi.
Good afternoon, James Cohn, Sam Director of Economic Development. Just to answer a couple of the questions that were raised, there were 2 staff members, county employees that were working on the Tech Hub. That was Francesca de Casada-Covey and Galen Troyer. They've both since left the county. They are not transitioning into the Tech Hub. The funding from the EDA does allow for the hiring of 2 full-time staff to support the program. That's a deputy regional innovation officer and a project manager. The county does have the opportunity, those are empty roles right now. The county does have the opportunity to fill those roles, and if this program does move externally, those roles would move 100% with the Tech Hub. I should note that Chessie is the interim Regional Innovation Officer. That is a designation by the EDA. She's continuing that role pro bono, and this whole proposal is to secure additional funding, private funding from the Knight Foundation, and that would allow for the ability to fill that role permanently, the Innovation Officer.
Jessie's the interim here, and she's also the person at night.
Yep.
Oh, that's convenient. Yeah, now I see what you're doing. Okay, Higgins, then Quinn Higgins, then Regalado, and then Steinberg. What? I thought you had your hand up.
Thank you,
All right.
thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, when a commissioner, as my colleague indicated, asks for questions and doesn't receive the answers to those questions, I think that alone is right to support a deferral. That's number one. Number two, the questions that I have are similar regarding staffing, but more specifically, in 2023, we had a similar item creating the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, another nonprofit entity that was similar in nature, and I believe that some of the players may have been similar. And maybe I'm wrong, but there was a $3 million funding of the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority in 2023 from I think it was ARPA funds. And so now, we have the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, which is a nonprofit board that already exists and was created, and there was quite a bit of a discussion regarding its need and what we do internally already. And now we're creating a Miami-Dade Tech Hub that honestly, when I compare the language in the item from 2023, and I won't belabor the point and read it, to the language that's contained in the item before us here, it sounds extremely duplicative and extremely similar, right? Innovation, growth, technology, bringing jobs, economic growth to Miami-Dade, et cetera, et cetera. Why do we need all of these independent 501c3 boards? And why can't the genesis of the item that's before us be housed within the already existing Miami-Dade Innovation Authority that we created 2 years ago?
So this opportunity, again, is to secure that funding to grow and be able to respond to the EDA's program. It is totally separate from the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, which is about finding solutions to county challenges and identifying startups to provide that service. It's a different entity, different program, different outcome.
So about the Innovation Authority, I have requested its death on several occasions. Because again, it was started, we got $3 million, it was seed money, and then the next year we were funding it, and the year after that we were funding it. It never brought us anything. When I asked about, doing water projects and doing other stuff, it brought us some, they were gonna do some sort of program in the airport that never really occurred. But my understanding is that the Innovation Authority is being reduced. So that's a good thing, because I always thought that was a ridiculous waste of money. But on this item, my concerns are similar to Higgins's concerns. Number one, obviously the mention of these county employees was kind of a red flag, and that it wasn't up to date, because we know that some of these employees have changed, right? But my other concern is, if we're gonna spin something off, then it should be financially viable on its own. I think that as a board, we're going to deal now with our budgets and turning away a bunch of CBOs and people who are doing God's work. And my concern is, when we create these things, if we're financially responsible for them, then why are we creating them? So if we're not if we're just sending something off into space with $70, to create its legal documents, so be it. the language about the federal funding, I mean, again, what federal funding? Like, there is no funding. We've been to DC, like, everyone's like hair on fire, right? So I don't understand this bit of it, because it's just not in line with the reality that we're all living with. So right now, and look, and I spoke to Jimmy about this on another issue in another item that's coming up in another committee. Some of these items are schizophrenic, and I will explain why. And we are saying that we have a budgetary hole and that we have to fill it, that we have to lay people off, that we don't have the money to fund, things that we have historically funded, that we have to tighten our belts, right? And that we have to find efficiencies because we are in a financial crisis. And then you bring an item like this, and if an average person is reading it, they're like, well, clearly the county commission has lost their minds, because are we in a financial crisis or are we not? Because again, we're creating things, and it's fine if we're gonna send something off into the ether, fantastic, as long as we are not financially responsible for it. But it has been my experience that when this board creates children, the children come back and they ask for money year after year after year after year. There's a failure to launch in this place. Like, these things don't launch on their own. And every time they get 1 penny, Jimmy, they come back and they ask for a match. And you know that that's true. And that's when I have a little bit of a match PTSD over here. Because when I see this funding, I ask myself, is there a match? Are we responsible for the match? Where is it coming from? And if we are going to be matching something, then why aren't we controlling it? What are these people going to do? Because all that this item speaks to is people got money, they're going to be doing stuff, the county commission is going to have no way of reining them in, but somehow they're going to show up in our budget. That's what I read.
Yeah, through the chair, if I can. My understanding, Commissioner, is that the Tech Hub was in fact awarded a grant. I think it's a $19.5 million grant. And that one of the conditions is the recipient must be an independent not-for-profit. So I think that's my understanding. But James, if you want to provide further context, that's why this item is here, is if we don't have an independent nonprofit, that money doesn't come down to South Florida.
Perfect.
That's
and
my
if it's
understanding.
not in our budget, and if it remains independent without county funding, I'm in. But can we have a commitment that they're not going to come back and ask for money?
James?
If I could just clarify with Jimmy's point. 19.5 million was the allocation, the approval from the EDA. 3.2 million of that came to Miami-Dade County, or is available to Miami-Dade County as a reimbursable grant for the governance structure to set this program up. The federal funding, we are clear there's no additional funding coming from the feds. This was approved last fall. And so we pivoted to go find outside money, private money, to continue to build this program. That's where we identified this $3 million from the Knight Foundation, and it is predicated upon the ability to move this program into a private entity. So to Jimmy's point, that is exactly what is at stake here, is the ability for us to secure this additional $3 million. No other funding or money is coming from the county. It is flat.
All right. Well, Mr. Chair, I would like to see that in the item. Because, yeah, I didn't, that's not explicit in the item. And if we can have that clarified in the item, I'm in.
And Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
I may, there is a mention in this item of the county will continue to provide in-kind services. In-kind services cost us money.
Of course.
And then my other question, the last time we met, those 2 positions move to the Resilience HUD, but you had told me that those 2 positions, to Chassie and Galen positions, would be backfilled. So there would be no savings to the county. Is that still the intention, or we don't know that till the budget comes out?
Those 2 positions.
Theoretically, there's 2 positions the EDA grant, unless I'm right, that's what you said. There were 2 positions that were available for the EDA grant, Chessie's and Galen's. And neither are with the county anymore. So those 2 positions would be filled in the Tech Hub thingamabob by 2 other people. But are you replacing the staff in your department?
We are not replacing the staff. There are 2 staff people, the two people that we just, excuse me, the two names that you just mentioned, they have left the county. Those roles are not being backfilled by the county. The EDA grant does allow for us to, or under that governance structure, to hire two roles. Those are separate. They are currently open. And what we would do is either, of course, those would travel with the funding, or in the interim, we could fill those roles by someone that would be full-time on the Tech Hub, and then when and if this takes place, they would transition. But those two roles are separate from the other roles. And the role that Francesca is playing is pro bono. It is interim, and currently, of course, she's not part of the staff right now.
Okay.
And what kind of in-kind services?
Yeah, so the grant does highlight a total of $333,000 over 5 years as in-kind services. That is mostly covered by the South Florida Regional Planning Council. $94,000 over 5 years, or about $18K a year, is what is anticipated for in-kind services, and that's really just the staff management of this whole process.
Okay.
So very minimal.
Last thing, I mean, we got people at the Innovation Authority. We could throw them at this thing and kill two birds with one stone.
Well, what we do have is 3 minutes before we would have to, before we have to extend this meeting, or I have to explain to the chair's office how I ran a long meeting. Okay. I think the things that they mentioned need to be cleaned up. Now, if you tell me that we need to do this before our September break, I'll ask my colleagues to, and this is to the administration, but I want that stuff, you all can work with my staff, I want that stuff explicitly stated in the item when it comes to the board at the next meeting if the chairman places on the agenda. And so that would be my caveat. I think those are very good points. I think it needs to be clear. I don't want, if the positions need to move over, and just eliminate the people who had those positions. Now, those are two of the savings. Those are two people we don't have to pink slip now. And so, as we look for savings other places, so I think that's reasonable.
Mr. Chair, can we move it without recommendation until they amend it?
Sure, I don't mind.
And move it without recommendation, amend it.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Chairman, I support.
Short adopted.
Mr. Chair, can we move the WASD items to the 16th?
Hold on for a second. Let's see what.
No, just really quickly. I do have some uneasiness on 2F. I'm reading it through, and I have many municipalities that this could potentially affect. So I would like I don't know if I can just change my vote to a no, or if I have to reconsider and just for the sake of voting no right now. I think notice is good. I'm sure there's a lot of really good things in here.
Well, and you can change your vote.
Okay, just show me as a no on 2F. Thank you.
Just for the record, to the extent that it affects your municipalities, it probably benefits them.
Right, that's why I need to really make sure I go through it with
You want to move to the?
The two WASD items to July 16th.
Yes.
I would move all of them. Unless
I would move
anybody
the
has an
agenda to
issue.
the 16th. Yeah. Move it to.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of trash ones too. So
Yeah, let's move all
them
to the 16th.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
The House and Senate could not agree on a state budget. The one they adopted Monday night totals $115.1 billion and includes $1.3 billion in tax cuts. The governor, House Speaker, and Senate President all had priorities that did not make it into the final product.
We were able to have civil discourse. We were able to have a difference of opinion. We were able to reach a conclusion that maybe either the Senate or the governor didn't agree with. That was our goal. Our goal was to be a co-equal branch of government, to have an opinion